Basically, electricity for automobiles wasn't invented until about 1908, or whenever Charles Kettering out of Delco down in Dayton, Ohio, figured out how to set up a regulator so that you could keep a battery charged up in a car without overcharging it and blowing it up. After that, there were electric motors and electric sparkers and all kinds of things in cars. This is a early Stanley burner right here that I'm looking at, and it was basically designed in 1895 before there was electricity, so they had to figure out how to have a fire, basically a 4 or 5 gallon an hour kerosene burner that did not use any electricity at all. They had nothing to run the air fan, nothing to run the sparker, nothing to run the pressurized thing, nothing. So what they started with, you start with kind of the same thing. This happens to be an SV, which was the last Stanley made, and I happen to have the forks for one of the early Stanleys. This one only has the one tube here. The early Stanleys had 2 tubes, but what you have here is a small nozzle that a jet of not high pressure, but high temperature, quite fast gasoline vapor comes out of, and it sits right like this. So the vapor entraps air and runs air into here, mixes with the air, so this acts as the air pump and also the mixer. So the air mixed with vaporized gasoline shoots into the plenum, which is underneath a cast iron grate. And the cast iron grate has a whole lot of things like this. Here is a pattern. Here is a pattern for a cast iron grate for a Stanley, which will give you some idea of what the shape is. This will be the flat surface on top that has all the little holes drilled into it. The deep V's are in here for strength, and they're filled with a refractory because you do not want the area underneath here to get really hot. You want the vapor and the air to come up through these 1,000-some little drilled holes in here that come up. There's a pilot light that lights it on fire, and this is called a vaporizing fire or a blue flame fire. The pilot light is this unit here, which you start with by figuring out how to heat it, and it works like that little Bunsen burner blowtorch I showed you to start with. It has a nozzle here which blows the vaporized gasoline through there, entraps the air, comes up through here, and you have a little blue flame coming out of here. And that is lit, and then that is kept on fire the whole time you're driving, all day long, the whole time you're driving your Stanley. The wind will often blow it out. There's all kinds of problems, and we will not go in them in great detail, but this kind of worked. The burner here with a cast iron would often get overheated. You've got blue flame at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit sitting up here, and trying to get everything to work properly is quite intriguing. But it is modulating in the sense that you can adjust the amount of flame. You can have a high flame or a low flame because it's a vaporizing burner. And that basically is why Stanley was very difficult to get started. Then I will show you what the Stanley boiler looks like. Stanley SV boiler, and it's about 20 inches high. You have 700 or 800 or more of these tubes, which are made out of copper, have steel ferrules, and this is called the bottom plate, and the top one is called a crown plate, and these, which is drilled, and these copper tubes go from one to the other. They're open at the other end. The flame is sitting down here. So the flame enters, and the water is about 2/3 up the tubes. The flame goes up these tubes, transfers all of its heat to the water in this pressure tank. And every so often, if you don't know what you're doing, you will run out of water. The bottom plate will get red hot. It is referred to as scorching the boiler. And when it scorches, the ends of these tubes get red hot. They expand a great deal, so when they contract, everything leaks. And it is not good to scorch the boiler, and it involves a huge amount of work to get that fixed. It also, because there's 5 gallons of water stored in this pressure tank, it takes 15 or 20 minutes for it to get heated up enough to boil. So there's many downsides to the Stanley boiler. The upside is that you can run it without electricity. And back then that was the only way to run it. These are quite strong. This one over here can be seen. I don't know if you can quite see it from this side, but it's wrapped with either 2 or 3 wrappings of 300,000 psi tensile strength piano wire. And these have never blown up because you have the huge amount of strength from the wire wrapping around it. It's a lot of work to make. It's a lot of work to maintain. And after 15,000 miles, this whole thing is burned out. And from having that 3,000 degree flame on it, and so you have to buy new boilers all the time. So they're quite a maintenance issue. But back in olden times, in the late 1800s, this was the only way you could make fire and make steam.